Story 1. Ghost in my life. Since I was very little, I've always had strange things happen to me that I couldn't understand or explain. I would see and hear things that terrified me. I didn't really mention these things to anyone until my teen years. And then my sisters started mentioning things that they had experienced. Growing up, we lived in this big old greenhouse in Cincinnati. Us kids slept upstairs in 3 large bedrooms. There was a door that led to the attic. I'd be downstairs getting ready to go up the stairs to play. And when I opened the door to the stairs, there at the top of the stairs would stand a dark figure. He'd be looking down on me, even though he had no eyes. Well, where his eyes would be was just solid black pools. I'd quickly shut the door and stay downstairs until one of my sisters decided that they wanted to go upstairs, and then I would tag along with them. It happened again one day, but this time the figure was looking over the banister at me. That was the last time I saw him for many years. The next time I saw him, he had big glowing eyes, and he asked me a question about my aunt. It was just a simple question. There was really no importance to the question. I didn't mention it to my sister, who I was living with at the time. She was pregnant, and I didn't want to upset her. But the same thing happened to her a couple weeks later, and she freaked out. There was only one bathroom in her apartment, and it was across the hall from my room. The ghost in her apartment would also whistle in our ears. We both mentioned this to each other. We both experienced it on several occasions. It got to the point where my sister never wanted to go upstairs by herself. Even on the hottest day in the middle of summer, that bedroom upstairs was always ice cold. Eventually we didn't even put furniture up there, just moving boxes. Very recently, my father-in-law died. My husband came home early from work that day, and he told me that his dad had died. And a short time later, he went back to work. I was writing out a shopping list for things that we needed to get in order for us to travel out of state for the funeral, when suddenly I heard my father-in-law's voice. I don't remember what he said. It happened too fast, and it almost sounded like he was in a tunnel, but it was his voice. Story 2. Mars Hill Ghost. When I was a freshman at Mars Hill College, all of the freshmen lived in the same dormitory. I lived on the 4th floor. I was on the short end of a hallway, and there was only 5 rooms. Over break, everyone in our dorm had gone home, or away, or fishing, or something. Very few of us were in the dormitory. Myself and a friend across the hall were the only ones there for a long weekend. That first night alone, we drank a few beers and watched some TV. We grew wary and we wandered off to our own rooms. Our rooms were across from each other. About an hour or so after going to our rooms, I heard heavy footsteps across the ceiling in the attic above us. I heard a door open and footsteps stomp down the stairs. I went to my door, intending to race across the hall to my friend's room. When I opened the door, she was standing in her doorway. She had heard the same noises. We just stood there, staring at each other. We looked down the hallway. We looked at our feet. There was bloodstains on the carpet, but only in front of our doors, not drops and smears all the way down the hallway. I slammed my door and locked it. I remained awake until sunrise, but I never heard anything else from that midnight visitor. We never told our suite mates about the experience. The story goes that it's actually the ghost of the woman who the building was named after, whose father had killed her and dragged her corpse to the attic. She periodically comes back down looking for her father. I don't know how true that is, but it's a scary story, and the experience I had that night scared me. I'll never forget it. Story 3. That Smile. It's my first job in med-surg. Code blue, a few doors down. Not my patient, but I run to help. CPR has been started. The nurse doing compressions is a tiny little thing, so I ask if she wants me to take over. She doesn't hesitate to take me up on the offer. The patient is an older gentleman. I'm guessing 80s at least. There's these two middle-aged ladies in there. They quickly leave the room. I later find out they're his daughters. The code team shows up. The doctor walks up to the opposite end of the bed, and he starts to ask me questions about the patient. I don't know the answers to these questions. So I look at him, and while I tell him I'm not the patient's nurse, I notice an older lady standing by the window. I hadn't seen her when we first walked in. She's in her 80s. She's wearing this blue and black sweater with a gold chain around her neck. We meet eyes for a second, and she smiles at me. You know that smile you might give someone that's kind of a subtle sign of sympathy more than anything else? This was not that kind of smile. This was a sign of pure joy. This lady was happy, which I thought was weird. This interaction is just a few short seconds, and I'm back to doing compressions. But this guy never responds, and eventually the code ends. I hang around to help the nurse and clean everything up. By this time, the whole team is gone. It's just me, the nurse, and the two daughters. And the man's body, of course. The lady I saw, who I assumed was the man's wife, is no longer in the room. I gather some of his things, and I come across his glasses. I turn to his daughters and ask if Mrs. X would like to have them. They say no, and begin to tell me that Mrs. X died just the summer before. So I apologize and explain that I just assumed the lady who was with them was his wife. They appear very confused and tell me they came by themselves and that they were the only people in that room the entire day. No one recalls seeing a cheerful elderly lady standing by the window, or anywhere else for that matter. I like to think that maybe it was his wife, and they're happy together again. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked the stories. If you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Bye.